More than 1,000 Persian warships sit anchored in the Bay of Phalerum. Behind them, Athens is burning. The Acropolis, the sacred heart of the city, has been reduced to ash and rubble. The Persian army has marched unopposed through all of mainland Greece north of the Peloponnese. Thermopylae has fallen. The city that built the fleet now defending Greece no longer exists. And inside the narrow strait between the island of Salamis and the Attic coastline, approximately 370 Greek triremes sit anchored, their commanders arguing about whether to run. It is September 480 BC. Xerxes, king of kings, commands the largest naval force the ancient world has ever assembled, somewhere between 800 and 1,200 warships. He controls the land. He controls the sea. His fleet has already broken the Greeks at Artemisium. His army shattered the Spartan rearguard at Thermopylae. Every rational calculation says the war is over. Standing against all of it is one Athenian general, technically not even the fleet's commander, who has already decided that Greece is going to win. Not because he has more ships, not because his crews are better, but because he has seen something Xerxes has not. And before the sun rises on a single morning in late September, he will turn the most powerful invasion fleet in the ancient world into a trap it sealed around itself. That general's name was Themistocles. To understand what Themistocles was working with, you have to understand the scale of the collapse that preceded the battle. The summer of 480 BC had been a string of Greek defeats and retreats. At Artemisium, the Greek fleet fought the Persian navy to a tactical standstill across 3 days of engagement. But when Thermopylae fell, the position became untenable. The fleet pulled back south. The Persian army burned its way through Boeotia, reducing Plataea and Thespiae to ruins before marching on Athens. But Athens was already empty. Some historians believe the evacuation was planned months before the battle, possibly as early as spring 480 BC, when the Athenians voted on what later became known as the Decree of Themistocles. The civilian population had been dispersed to Salamis, Aegina, and the city of Troezen on the far side of the Saronic Gulf. Whether the evacuation was a last-minute emergency or a prepared strategic move remains debated. What is clear is that when Xerxes reached Athens, he found a ghost city. He burned it anyway. The Persian fleet repositioned to the Bay of Phalerum on the eastern side of the Salamis Strait, approximately 5 miles from where the Greek ships were anchored. The two forces now faced each other across a narrow channel, 1 mile wide at its tightest section, flanked by the island of Salamis to the west and the Attic mainland to the east. The strait had 2 exits, a western channel running toward Megara and the eastern mouth toward Piraeus and open water. The Greek command structure at this moment was fractured almost beyond repair. Nominal authority over the fleet sat with the Spartan Eurybiades, a compromise decision made before the invasion, since Athens commanded the largest naval contingent, but the other city-states refused to serve under Athenian command. Themistocles led roughly 180 Athenian triremes, the largest single block of the fleet, but he held no formal strategic authority. The Allied War Council was splitting. Peloponnesian commanders argued loudly for abandoning Salamis, retreating to the Isthmus of Corinth, and joining the Spartan land forces already building a wall across that narrow neck of land. Themistocles could see the flaw in that logic immediately. A wall across the isthmus meant nothing as long as Persia controlled the sea. Xerxes could simply bypass it, load troops onto those 1,000+ ships, and land them anywhere along the Peloponnesian coast. The wall would be a monument to strategic confusion, and if the Greek fleet abandoned Salamis and scattered toward the isthmus, it would lose the one thing that gave it any chance: the terrain. Greek triremes were lighter and faster than their Persian counterparts, but they could not survive a straight numbers fight on open water. Against a 3-to-1 disadvantage in open sea, the Persian fleet would simply envelop, encircle, and overwhelm them. The strait at Salamis was different. In a channel 1 mile wide, the Persian numerical advantage was meaningless. A fleet of 1,000 ships jammed into that narrow corridor was not a fleet anymore. It was a crowd. And Themistocles understood that crowds cannot fight. The problem was, he could not simply order the Greeks to stay. He had already argued the case and lost votes. The Peloponnesians had the numbers in council, and Xerxes, watching from the shore with every reason to be patient, had no incentive whatsoever to sail into that strait and fight on Greek terms. This is where the tactical picture becomes extraordinary. Xerxes' position was genuinely strong. He controlled the land and sea approaches. His fleet was already positioned to blockade the strait from outside, and time was working in his favor. Greek alliances were fragmenting under pressure. One more day of argument in the War Council, and the Peloponnesians might simply leave, taking their ships with them. If the Greek fleet scattered, Xerxes could hunt it down in pieces. If it retreated to the isthmus, he could bypass the land wall by sea. Either outcome ended the war. But Themistocles had identified two vulnerabilities buried inside that confident Persian position. The first was logistical. Persian forces had been in the field since spring, operating at the end of a vast and strained supply chain, stretching back through Thrace and across the Hellespont. The army had to be fed. The fleet, which included supply ships bringing provisions for tens of thousands of oarsmen, was consuming resources at a rate the campaign could not sustain indefinitely. Xerxes needed to finish this in 480 BC. He could not winter in Greece and resume the campaign in 479 BC without serious strategic risk. He needed one decisive engagement. He needed to destroy the Greek fleet. The second vulnerability was psychological. The Persians had won at Thermopylae through betrayal. A local Greek had shown them a mountain path around the Spartan position. The lesson Persia had learned from that campaign was that Greek traitors existed and could be used. They were primed to believe one. Themistocles saw both vulnerabilities and built his solution around them simultaneously. On the night before, what he feared would be the final vote to retreat, he acted without the council's knowledge or approval. He summoned a man named Cychinus. Cychinus was Themistocles' household slave, a Persian-born prisoner of war who had become tutor to his children, trusted completely, steady under pressure, and capable of delivering a message that would decide the fate of Greece. Themistocles gave him a fabricated message and sent him across the strait by small boat toward the Persian fleet at Phalerum. The message, as recorded by Herodotus, was precisely constructed. Cychinus presented himself as a covert envoy of Themistocles, who claimed to be secretly aligned with Xerxes and to desire a Persian victory. The Greek commanders were fighting among themselves, he reported. The alliance was collapsing. The Peloponnesians were planning to escape through the strait under cover of darkness that very night. If Xerxes moved immediately, sealing both exits of the channel before dawn, he could trap the entire Greek fleet inside it and destroy it in a single action. Whether Cychinus delivered the message to Xerxes directly or to Persian naval commanders is not entirely clear. Herodotus says the message reached the fleet of the Medes, not Xerxes personally. Some historians have also argued that the Persians may have been preparing to move toward the strait regardless of the message, and that Livius.org's assessment captures the situation accurately. The Persians were, in a sense, already being drawn in. But all ancient sources agree on what happened next. Xerxes responded immediately. He ordered his fleet to seal both exits of the Salamis Strait before the Greeks could escape. Through the night, Persian ships moved to block the southern exit toward the open sea. An Egyptian squadron, according to Herodotus, though some sources question the details, was reportedly dispatched to seal the western channel near Megara. The Persian fleet rode through the darkness, holding position, waiting to intercept a Greek breakout that was never coming. Back inside the strait, confirmation arrived from an unexpected source. Aristides, the Athenian statesman recently recalled from exile, now fighting alongside Themistocles, came to the Greek flagship with urgent news. He had seen the Persian fleet moving. Both exits of the strait were being sealed. There was no longer any escape route to debate. The vote to retreat was now irrelevant. The Persians had done exactly what Themistocles needed them to do, and neither they nor the Peloponnesian commanders could reverse it. Themistocles had solved both problems with one move. His own fleet could not flee. The Persians were coming in. The Greek commanders prepared for battle. Dawn broke over the Saronic Gulf in late September. Livius.org records the date as the 29th, and the Persian fleet moved into the Salamis Strait in formation. From a hillside above the eastern shore, Xerxes watched from an elevated throne, surrounded by scribes prepared to record the names of officers who distinguished themselves in the destruction of Greece. What he watched instead was the unraveling of everything. The Persian fleet entered the channel in columns, heavy warships pressing forward from the eastern mouth toward where the Greek triremes were forming up, across the narrowest section of the strait. The lead Persian ships advanced, and then the compression began. The channel was 1 mile wide. The Persian fleet was not 1 mile wide. Ships in the rear pressed forward, not yet understanding that the front had slowed. Ships in the front had no room to spread laterally, no room to maneuver the turning arcs that open water naval tactics required. Captains lost sight of their flanks. Individual squadrons lost cohesion. Aeschylus, the Athenian playwright who fought at Salamis, described what happened in his play, The Persians, written just 8 years after the battle, while thousands of eyewitnesses were still alive to fact-check it. The Persian fleet, he wrote, had rowed all night, holding position at the exits in the dark. Dawn found them already exhausted, already in the channel, already compressed, and they were struck on their flank. The Greek triremes drove forward in a deliberate battle line. Their tactical method was the ramming strike, driving the iron-sheathed bow into the hull of an enemy vessel, backing off, and striking again, combined with the diekplous, a maneuver that punched through the enemy line and attacked exposed sterns. In open water, these tactics could be countered by a fleet with room to respond. Inside the Salamis Strait, there was no room. Persian ships turning to respond to one Greek attack collided with the Persian ships behind them. The geometry of the channel turned Persian numbers from an advantage into a catastrophe. The Greeks were not fighting a 3-to-1 battle. They were fighting a series of roughly equal engagements along a narrow front, where Persian reinforcement from the rear was physically impossible. The Persian fleet could not bring its strength to bear, because its strength was stuck in a column stretching out of the eastern mouth and back toward Phalerum. The chaos compounded. In the confusion, Artemisia, the Persian allied queen of Halicarnassus, who commanded her own ships at Salamis, reportedly rammed a Persian vessel, possibly to escape Greek pursuit, possibly to extricate herself from the press. The incident illustrated perfectly what the strait had done to Persian command and cohesion. Ships from the same fleet could no longer tell friend from enemy. By the time the battle ended, approximately 200 to 300 Persian vessels had been sunk or captured. Greek losses stood at around 40 ships. Xerxes, on his hillside throne, had watched the scribes record not triumph, but collapse. He ordered no second engagement. The Persian fleet withdrew to Phalerum. In the immediate aftermath, Xerxes reportedly attempted to construct a causeway or pontoon bridge across the strait to attack Salamis with his land forces. With the Greek fleet now controlling the channel, the attempt went nowhere. His general Mardonius argued that the defeat was not decisive, that a selected land force should winter in Thessaly and resume the campaign overland in 479 BC. Xerxes agreed, left Mardonius with a significant army, and withdrew personally back toward Asia. He crossed the Hellespont and never returned to Greece. Mardonius was defeated the following year at Plataea. On roughly the same day, accounts differ on the precise timing, the remaining Persian fleet was destroyed at Mycale on the coast of Ionia. The invasion was over. The scale of the consequence is difficult to overstate. Without the Greek victory at Salamis, the Isthmus Wall was a road to nowhere. Persia could have bypassed it by sea and landed troops at will along the Peloponnesian coast. Without a unified fleet, the Greek city-states would almost certainly have fragmented, each making individual terms with the empire. The Athens that produced Socrates, Pericles, Sophocles, and the world's first functioning democracy was still a generation away. That Athens only happened because the fleet held at Salamis. What made Themistocles different was not one good decision under pressure. It was a pattern of decisions made years before the battle arrived. In 483 BC, 3 years before Salamis, he had persuaded the Athenian assembly to use a windfall from the silver mines at Laurium to build 200 new triremes instead of distributing the money to citizens. Most Athenians wanted the silver. Themistocles wanted a navy. He understood, a decade before the battle, that Greece's survival depended on controlling the sea. The fleet he built in 483 BC was the fleet that won at Salamis. He understood terrain as a weapon long before he needed to use it. The choice of the Salamis Strait was not a desperate fallback. It was a deliberate selection, the one place where Persian numbers could be neutralized and Greek seamanship could matter. He understood the political problem as clearly as the military one. The Greek alliance was not a unified command. It was a coalition of nervous city-states, each calculating their own survival. Themistocles could not order them to fight. He could only arrange conditions in which fighting was the only option left. The Salamis mission closed both problems: enemy reluctance and allied hesitation, with a single move executed on a single night. And he understood his enemy's psychology precisely. Xerxes' desire for a fast, decisive campaign, Persia's established habit of exploiting Greek traders, the confidence that comes from controlling the land and sea simultaneously. Every element of the deception was built from accurate intelligence about what Xerxes wanted to believe. The message was not random, it was engineered. Xerxes watched his fleet burn from that throne above the strait, surrounded by scribes who had come to record Persian glory. The irony is almost too precise to be historical, and yet every ancient source confirms it. The man who built the largest invasion fleet the ancient world had ever seen watched it destroyed in a single morning from a seat he had constructed specifically to witness his own triumph. Themistocles was ostracized from Athens within a decade, driven out by the same city he had saved. He spent his final years under Persian patronage, governing a Greek city inside the empire he had turned back at Salamis. The greatest enemy Persia ever faced died on Persian soil. But in that narrow strait, on one September morning in 480 BC, he had done something no one else believed was possible. He had taken a collapsing alliance, a fractured command, and a fleet outnumbered 2 or 3 to 1. And he had built, from nothing but terrain and deception and perfect timing, the trap that broke an empire.